This is the January episode of our series, The Self-Sufficient Year. And things don't stop in winter. It's incredibly cold, but we've got so much on our plate.
Hello, welcome to English Country Life. My name's Hugh, and together with my lovely wife Fiona, we run this small holding in rural Lincolnshire. And I'm going to tell you, I love this weather. I love it cold, I love it frosty, I love big shirts and silly hats. You can keep all that horrible damp grey stuff that we had earlier in the winter. This is the weather for me. Now, January for us is a super busy time, and I really believe if we set ourselves up properly for the year in January, it makes the rest of the year go so much easier. And we want to focus on three things in today's episode. Firstly, pruning. Lots of different types of pruning, but a lot of the shrub stuff, a lot of the top fruit is dormant now, and it's the perfect time to prune it. And if you don't prune it, you don't get good air circulation. Whatever is growing puts all its energy in the wrong place, and honestly you're going to limit the quality and quantity of your crops. We're also going to look at planting, and in some of our crops, if we get them planted now, we will double or even treble our yield. And lastly, we want to look at maintenance. It's good in these cold, crisp days to get our maintenance tasks out of the way, and as the soil warms up then, we're not diverted from where our efforts need to be. So let's get going.
This is our large fruit cage, and I say large fruit cage because we do have a smaller one which houses our currant plants, so black currants, white currants and red currants. In this fruit cage, this is the first one we put in, we've got blackberries, one row here on the left, and then I've got two rows of raspberries here on my right hand side. Now the blackberries are obvious because they have got lots of lush green foliage at this time of year, and the raspberries are just bare canes. Now I need to get pruning in January. It's the perfect time to do that work. And what am I actually trying to do? Well, with the blackberries, what I need to do is remove any of the dead branches at all. So I'm going to go through and make sure I take all of those out. But as you can see, this plant is incredibly vigorous too, and there's lots of branches which intertwine and knot around each other, and the problem with that is, first of all, I can't get to the fruit, and second of all, it doesn't allow air circulation once the fruit forms, and that can actually lead to mould on the fruit. So what I need to do is actually pull a lot of the living branches out too and make sure that I can see the fruit and it's not going to go mouldy. Now the raspberries, whole different ball game. Now let me explain. When we put the two rows of raspberries in, we had three varieties. So we had an early, a mid-season and a late season variety. So we had raspberries all through the year, and they were in beautiful blocks. So early in one block, mid in another, and late season in the final block. Really easy to work out where they were. Now the only problem is, some plants did well, some plants didn't, and the ones which we did very well, we would thin them out and actually take any new canes that were formed and use them to fill in the spaces of the ones which didn't do well. So what we've ended up with is no longer discrete blocks of early, mid and late. They're all mixed up, and we've got no idea which are which. And it's even more complicated because two of the original varieties needed in January to be cut right down to the ground, so they would throw up new canes for the fruiting year. And then the third variety needed to be left so the canes would form fruit on the existing cane. Now, that means that we needed to come up with a strategy, and what we did last year is what we decided to do is we would just pull out any canes which were dead, and what we would then do is that any canes which were alive, and we can test that just by rubbing our fingernail on the cane itself. If it produces green pulp, it's alive. If it's brown, it's dead. But if it was alive, we just left it. And it could have been one of those varieties which needed cutting down to the ground. We're not really sure. But it has to be said, we had a bumper crop last year. It was amazing. And even in January, we are still eating our way through those raspberries that we harvested last year. We've still got loads of dried raspberries, and we've got lots and lots in the freezer too. So it's going to keep us going until the raspberries start harvesting again. But as you can see, I've got a lot to do. So I'm going to get started.
If there's one thing we can do to increase our yield and improve our self-reliance, it's starting plants early. Honestly, I cannot stress that too much. It makes a massive difference. Now, we do have limited heat in our greenhouses, but honestly, it's not enough for seed germination. So we use heated propagators, and we keep them in the cottage, and our poor windowsills will be groaning under them in another couple of weeks. But it works really well for us. There's other techniques, there's heat pads that you can use, all sorts of other things. For us, the propagators that fit on our windowsill, single seed tray size, are absolutely perfect. Honestly, they're inexpensive, and all they do is emit a gentle amount of heat, keep that compost warm, let the seeds germinate early, and then we'll keep those somewhere warm, harden them off in the greenhouses, and then plant out. There are some techniques that we've developed over the years that I think make using them a little bit easier. One of them is, of course, they don't have drain holes, and it's very easy to end up with your compost sitting in a pool of water. The seeds will rot, nothing germinates, and it's very frustrating. So we got technique to get around that. And what we do is we use plastic modules for planting. I don't like using plastic, but they do make potting on so much easier. So we're very careful with them, and we reuse them year after year after year. Once we've done that, what we do is we take those plastic modules, we put them in a normal, conventional drained seed tray. You may have to trim the edges a little bit to get them fit right inside, but that's okay. Just take a pair of scissors and cut them down. I fill them with our potting mix, and then I'll take them outside and I'll water them in the drained seed tray. I tried that this time, and all the watering cans were full of water and frozen solid, so I had to defrost one in order to do this. Then I'll let them drain, take them inside, and I'll plant up our seeds. And all the seeds we're using this year are our own saved seeds. And again, that keeps the cost down, means I can plant more of them without worrying about the cost, get a better yield. Once the seeds are in, I'll cover them over, and don't oversow. 1 or 2 seeds per module is more than sufficient. Once they're covered over, I'll give them another little water, let them drain thoroughly. Then I'll transfer the whole pack of modules into the heated propagator that isn't drained. I'll label them well, because you only want mystery veg once. I've done it. You end up with plants, you don't know what they are, what variety they are. It's a pain. So always use some sort of plant label in your propagators, and particularly if you're mixing varieties in the propagator, because otherwise you've got no chance of knowing what's what. And trust me, these are mistakes I've made. Then what we'll do, pop those propagators on the windowsills in the house. We'll pot them on as the plants emerge, and don't wait too long, otherwise they get really, really leggy. We'll gradually harden them off in the greenhouses and plant out in the spring.
This is part of the small holding which you won't have seen before, and there's a good reason for that, because look at the state of this render. It's peeling, it's cracked, it's falling off, really, really bad state. Now this is part of our barnsteading, and the barnsteading is made up of 3 large barns in a U shape, and this smaller barn is an offshoot. And we put the render on originally because one of the large barns in the barnsteading, the bricks, were in a fairly poor state, and we wanted to make sure that this building actually had a longer life and was safer for longer. And the render's done a great job there, and that building has taken it incredibly well. But clearly this one, where the bricks are perfectly okay, and the one behind me, don't like the render at all. And it's not that we haven't repaired it, because we have time and time again. So Hugh and I have made a decision to remove the render from this barn and the one behind me completely. Now, we could have got someone in to actually do that work for us, which would have cost us hundreds and hundreds of pounds, but instead I made a special request of my lovely husband for a Christmas present, which probably is quite unusual, and it's this one. It's an STS hammer action drill with a chisel bit, and this is a fantastic bit of kit. Now, unlike having to pay someone in to come in and do the work for us, which would be hundreds and hundreds of pounds, this was less than £100, and this means that I can safely remove the render without damaging the brick. Now, I can only use it for short periods of time because it is incredibly heavy, but I'm not in a rush. I don't have to have this job done in a week. I can take months if I want to. So what I'm doing at the moment is days when it's not raining, I come out and I do a little bit every single day, and together with my trusty platform here, I can do it at height without any issues. And I do about half an hour at a time, and then half an hour's clear up, and then I go on and do some other jobs around the property, and it works really, really well. As you can see, I've made a start around the corner. A lot of that render's already been removed, and I'm really quite chuffed with myself. I'm quite enjoying the process, if I'm brutally honest. And at the end of the process, I've got an amazing bit of kit which is going to help us out with other jobs. If we ever need to break up any concrete on the property, this is going to do the job for me. But it's an actually very effective hammer action drill. It doesn't need to just have the chisel bit on the end. I've got a whole array of different masonry bits that have come with this unit, so it's going to be very useful going forward.
January is the perfect time to prune a lot of your top fruit. And by top fruit, I mean your orchard, your fruit trees, etc. Now, what I'm talking about here are things like apples and pears. It is really important that you don't prune stone fruit. By stone fruit, I mean cherries, I mean plums, I mean gauges, I mean damsons, that kind of stuff. Because if you do, you can let in something called bacterial canker that will give your tree really bad disease. Unusually, stone fruit are better pruned in the summer to avoid that risk. So leave them for now, but do all your apples and pears and those types of trees. And what we're looking for really is something like this. I'm trying to prune my trees into a good goblet, a wine glass shape, if you like, a bowl on a stick if we want to be basic about it. And the reason that I'm trying to do that is it gets good air circulation, it allows the branches to fan out so that you get more and more as the tree develops, but you also can get to the fruits to pick it. I'm trying to keep this tree to a height where we can easily gather and pick the fruit. I don't want fruit 4 or 5 meters up in the air. We chose our rootstocks accordingly, so that's what I'm trying to maintain these young trees to. Now we do have a complete series on apple tree pruning, and what I'm going to do, I'll put a link somewhere up here to that series. If you want to know the detail of what we're doing, I really suggest going through that, and explains all sorts about how we prune apple trees. If you want to know the really detailed ins and outs of all the different types of fruit, bushes, trees, etc., buy the RHS pruning guide. I'll put a link down in the description, and that will really give you all the different pruning techniques from one year to the next.
So January in a nutshell is all about planning to get as much done as possible for the coming year. We need to get those plants started so they can get into the ground as soon as the ground warms up, but we've got a little bit of time before that happens, so we can get those plants growing far more. And of course we've got to get as much of the render off the wall as possible, because as soon as spring comes we're going to be run off our feet. Now, if you have liked this content, take a moment and give me a thumbs up down below. If you're not already a subscriber, come and join us. Hit subscribe and the bell icon. It's a completely free service and you'll get to know of every new video as soon as it goes live. If you've got a question for us, leave it in the comment section and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But for now, thanks for watching and we look forward to seeing you next time.